It's so bright out now. I don't understand Washington weather at all. So yesterday we pulled off the intake manifold and the TGVs on the car as well as all of the OEM fuel stuff. So today I wanted to start focusing on getting some stuff back on the car so that way we just don't have massive piles of parts everywhere. These are always crooked, I swear. So with that being said, I want to show you guys how to set up the TGV deletes with the injectors and the fuel rails. Ideally, I do want to get the fuel lines ran today, but I did notice something and I might need to order an adjustable fuel pressure regulator. But we'll find out once we start getting the fuel line ran. So we're gonna start running as much of it as we can today to get that knocked out. I also wanna clean up some hoses out in the engine bay just to organize them a little better so it doesn't look like a complete rat's nest in the car. So with that being said, I already assembled one of the TGV deletes with the injectors, the fuel rail and everything. So I wanna show you guys kind of how you need to go about doing this. They have different sizing for these phenolic spacers that come with the TGV delete. So I do wanna show you guys which set you're gonna be needing for if you are following this build using ID injectors. So let me hop over to the bench. I'll get this camera put up on the mount above me looking down at the table, and I'll show you guys how to assemble these so that way we can start getting them installed onto the car so we have one less thing to worry about. Okay, now I do want to show you guys, well, first of all, I apologize for the mess up here. There's things literally everywhere, but I do want to show you guys. So this is the one that I've already put together and assembled. So as you can see, we have the ID 1050s. These are the same as the Cobb ones. Set up in here, we've got the phenolic spacer set up with the fuel rails, and then we've got the AN fittings on both sides of the actual fuel rail to go into the fuel lines that we're going to be installing. So not too bad to get this thing assembled. It was a little bit of a pain at first, but I promise you it is not as bad as people make it out to be. So what you're going to need for this, you are going to need the TGV delete, you're going to need your fuel rail, you're going to need the fittings for the fuel rail. These are going to come with your fuel lines if you are making your own. So these are just AN fittings. They come with the fuel lines. They're going to end up going in your fuel rails. They're not too bad to install. You are going to need an Allen key for the Allen bolts that are going to hold the fuel rail to the TGV delete. They also come with some O-rings, so don't lose the O-rings. You are going to be needing those. And then, like I said, the set comes with these phenolic spacers. Now, 4 of them are large, 4 of them are small. IAG sends you both sizes, so they have a chart on their website that'll tell you which size you need for whatever injector you're running. For most of the ID series that I saw, they are all going to be large based phenolic spacers, and I'll show you guys where these sit here in a moment. Now the first thing that I need to do is go ahead and get the fuel dampener plug put in the bottom of it. It is a 8mm Allen key, so what they suggest you do is go ahead, put it in, thread it until it is hand tight. So once you've got that center plug hand tight, what you're gonna do is you're gonna take a Sharpie, and I'm just gonna mark up on it. So I know, well, for you guys it's down, but for me it's up. So I don't know if you can really see it on there, but right on there, I did mark on it. Now what they say to do after you get it hand tight is go ahead and tighten it 3 full turns past that point. So I want to rotate it 3 times, get it back to pointing up, and then that should set the fuel pulse dampener plug so that way it is properly installed. We don't have to worry about it. I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna throw this on my vice grip real quick to be able to get this last turn in on it so that way it's nice and hunky-dory. So I just went over to the vice grip and tightened it for the 3rd time, so our arrow is pointing up again. It has been 3 full rotations after hand tight. Now once we have that done, we're gonna have to go ahead and start setting up the fuel rail, the injectors, and the TGV delete to all kind of mesh into one. So what we're gonna need to do here is we're gonna need to take these 2 phenolic spacers that come with the fuel rails, and those are gonna end up sitting on the bottom side of the fuel rail right here. They are countersunk to sit in there perfectly, but before we do that, we're gonna have to run the bolts through the top of the fuel rail. So it comes with these 2 small Allen bolts here. What we're gonna wanna do is just thread those through. Not even thread them through, just slide them through. I'm gonna keep a finger on the back side of them, and then you run these phenolic spacers over the top of them. And that's gonna keep the spacing between the injector and the TGV appropriate. You take those small black O-rings, like the one here in my hand, and you're gonna put those around these bolts, and that's gonna keep the phenolic spacer in place while we're installing these. So now as you can see, phenolic spacers aren't going anywhere, and they are now on the fuel rail. So the next thing that we need to do is go ahead, I'm gonna get these injectors lubed up a little bit so that way we can slide them into place on the TGVs. Once they're slid into place on the TGVs, we can go ahead and slide them into the top of the fuel rail and bolt them down and get everything nice and tight. Now what I do suggest you do here is go ahead and lube up the O-rings on the injector, so that way you're gonna be able to get these to fully seat into the TGVs and into the fuel rails. The last thing you wanna do is get all of this installed and have fuel leaking everywhere. So try to avoid that if you can. So I'm just taking a small dab of oil and just lubing up that injector O-ring a little bit. This is literally the smallest dab of oil as well. You don't need to glob it on there. You don't need a lot. You just need enough to get it to slide into place happy. You don't want to force anything with the injector to go in. So now that we have that done, I'm gonna go ahead and seat the injectors in here. I'm gonna have my pigtails coming off to the left and the right of the TGV. Perfect. So with our injectors seated into the TGVs here, I'm gonna go ahead, take the fuel rail and start threading it into these two inner holes on the outside of the TGV. So these are Allen key also. You're gonna wanna line up the injectors with the fuel rail, get everything lined up. You don't wanna force anything in, like I said, just let it all naturally slide into place so it's all nice and happy. So when you're tightening these, go back and forth left to right. You don't want to tighten one side all the way down and then go back to the other side and tighten it. So what I like to do as I'm tightening these down, you want to make sure you're looking at the back side, make sure that the injector is still seated into the TGV and into the top of the fuel rail. You don't want to get the injector caught off to the side of it and start pushing this thing down. You'll damage the injector, you'll destroy it, then you're gonna have to get new injectors. So I would highly advise against that and just take the extra 2 seconds to make sure that everything is tightening down properly. Now the torque spec to the fuel rail to TGV delete is going to be 14.1 foot-pounds. I don't have a torque wrench able to do that. The lowest mine actually goes is 20, so I'm just going to make sure that these are nice and good and tight because we don't want them flying off. Now, we have the fittings for the ends of the fuel rails. These are just AN fittings. Go ahead, hand tighten these in first. They have O-rings on them to prevent them from leaking and shooting fuel everywhere, because that's the last thing any of us want. No one wants fuel spraying everywhere. So I'm gonna go ahead and get both of these hand tight to start with, just like so. And then I have this like cheap AN wrench that I bought on Amazon for like 15 bucks. Works extremely well. Just get it to the size you need and then go ahead and tighten these down. Now we have our TGVs, injectors, and fuel rails ready to go back onto the car. So with that, I'm gonna go get one of these installed. Actually, I'm gonna bump the camera over to the car. We'll start getting these guys installed onto it. I have new gaskets. IAG actually provides you with new gaskets. However, I bought some from Subaru, so I'm just gonna use the Subaru OEM gaskets to get these on the car. So let's hop over to the car. Let's start getting these installed. So I got one of them mocked up in the car and I decided I'm not going to install these on the car today. I need to be able to get down here to get that secondary air pump delete out, which is this silver line that runs over there to the air pump guide dealios. So with that, I did want to mock one up to show you guys how it looks in the engine bay, and it looks much better, I tell you. So everything lines up perfectly. I went ahead, I cleaned off the mating surface of where the TGV, the gasket meets the block, and I need to do the same thing over here still. So ooh, baby. I didn't write that, by the way. That was Cameron. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna pull this one off. I'm gonna get this retaped back up. I'm gonna clean this side, and I'll show you guys what I'm using to clean the mating surface where these need to mate up. Right now it's just a rag, some acetone, which that's extremely blown out. Don't look over there, I apologize. And a razor blade, but that's, oh no, it's up there. I was about to say that seems to have disappeared. But the fitment of these is spot on. So I also didn't want to install these because I still have to take this turbo out, and I'm not feeling, well, I can't do that today because I don't have the new turbo. Don't get that till tomorrow. I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna get this guy pulled back out. I'm gonna get it masked, I'm gonna get it remasked, and then I'll show you guys how I'm cleaning these and the before and after of what they should look like before you're installing these TGV deletes, because you don't want to just uninstall the old ones, leave all the old gasket residue there, put the new ones on, and then send it. You'll end up with some leaks over time, so I would not suggest doing that. So let me get that guy pulled back out and masked back up, and then I'll show you guys this side. So I just got this side remasked up, TGV off. Now, as you can see down here, you see all that old gasket material, just that's on the block. We need to get all of that off, or at least as much as possible. These fuel lines just keep getting in the way. Just stay out of the way. So I'm gonna take a little bit of acetone, go ahead, soak those a little bit so the material becomes much softer. Take a razor blade, start scraping that off, and then I have a shop vac that I'm using to vacuum up all the old schmoo, so that way none of it is falling down into the cylinder heads, because we would not want that. Probably wouldn't do anything extremely detrimental, but I would still like to avoid it if possible. So let me get going here, pulling all of this off with some acetone and a razor blade, and then I'll show you guys the after, just what it looks like after we get all this like schmoo off of here. Okay, so I just got done cleaning off the mating surface where the gasket's gonna end up sitting, and I am much happier with that. That's gonna do a lot better than the old one would have. So like I was saying, I was using acetone to kind of break up the structure of the gasket. As soon as I was done doing that, I took the small razor blade and just scrape away from the ports. If you don't feel comfortable doing that, you can shove like a paper towel or something in there that's not gonna get any particulate. There are some shop towels out there that won't drop like fibers everywhere. So I was using a microfiber just to try to mitigate that when I was using the acetone, but every time I did scrape the surface, I'd grab the shop vac down here, bring the shop vac up, and vacuum any particulate that was kind of hanging out around these TGV, or around the intake ports for the block. That's pretty much it for cleaning it. So these are now ready for the TGVs to actually be installed. That's all I wanted to really show you guys today. I made a critical error in parts ordering, and I need to order a fuel pressure regulator like ASAP for the car. So my understanding is that the IAG Flex Fuel line kit for the Cobb ethanol sensor utilized the OEM, or at least utilized the Cobb fuel pressure regulator. That's not the case. I need to order an Aeromotive fuel pressure regulator to work with the setup. So I need to get that ordered today, so that way we can get the parts here on time to keep going on the build. So the fuel stuff is kind of on a standstill until I get that fuel pressure regulator in. I might expedite shipping on it, so that actually I'm not, because we have like a month. But I need to wrap this one up. I have a showing on the house today because someone might potentially buy it. If they do, I really appreciate whoever does. I did want to show you guys the assembly process of getting those TGV deletes, injectors, fuel rails, and that fitting onto those fuel rails, so that way we can just get them right on there. As well as cleaning the mating surface for the block to be able to get that seal properly on there. Since I am also ordering that fuel pressure regulator, I am gonna order the phenolic spacers to go with the TGV deletes. Essentially, the phenolic spacer is just a small gap between where the TGV and the block mate. So since the block heats up and it gets very hot, the TGV deletes are also metal, so you get that thermal transference of heat from the block up to the TGVs. So what the phenolic spacer does is it not only rises the intake manifold a little bit more for bigger turbo inlets, bigger turbos, and whatever you're trying to squeeze in there, but it'll also give a nice cooling efficiency bump to the intake manifold. So that way we will have cooler intake manifold temperatures versus what we would with the convection heating from the block to the TGVs to the actual intake manifold. So I'm gonna get that stuff ordered today, so that way we can get it ASAP and keep going on the fueling stuff. So I maybe have like 10-15 minutes before I need to start cleaning up the house and the garage a little bit before these people show up to prep the house for sale. But I'm gonna pull off like 2 more things in the engine bay before I head inside, but I'm gonna do it off camera. I'm just pulling out an O2 sensor off the downpipe and the turbo blanket off the turbo, and spray everything with PB Blaster, so when I come out tomorrow we can easily just pull off the turbo, pull off the up pipe and the downpipe without running into a lot of issues. So I'm just gonna let it soak in there overnight. But with that, that is going to be it for this video. Just a quick one today. So if you enjoyed the content, if it helped you, hopefully someone out there was helped by this. I don't know what my hair is doing right now. I'm just gonna pull this all the way down. But you know what to do. If you like to, go ahead, hit that little thumbs up, turn it blue. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, greatly appreciate it if you would. I don't know what corner I'm gonna pick yet. I just hit myself in the face, but go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you so desire to. But with that, I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace out, homies. Woo!